The heart of Rome lies a city unlike any other. It's the smallest country in the world, yet it holds more power, wealth, and secrets than entire nations. The Vatican, home of the Pope and the Catholic Church's crown jewel, and one of the most controversial religious institutions in human history. From ancient manuscripts buried beneath marble floors to whispers of secret societies and buried truths, this is the story of how a spiritual empire became a geopolitical enigma. Before it was the heart of Christendom, before the popes ruled as kings and whispered into the ears of emperors, the Vatican was a hill of death. No, seriously, what we now call the Vatican Hill wasn't always a spiritual haven. In ancient Rome, it was a swampy, unclean area used mostly for burials. The name Vatican comes from the Latin word Vaticanus, tied to the word vaticina, meaning prophecies. Around 64 AD, the Emperor Nero needed a scapegoat for the Great Fire of Rome. He blamed the Christians, then a weird fringe cult, and started executing them en masse. Among them was Simon Peter, one of Jesus' 12 apostles. According to legend, Peter was crucified upside down by choice because he didn't consider himself worthy to die like Christ. His body was buried in a simple grave on Vatican Hill. No fanfare, just another dead heretic in Rome's eyes. But here's where the transformation begins. As Christianity spread underground, Peter's grave became a pilgrimage site. Quiet at first, secretive. Fast forward to the early 300s, Rome is cracking, Christianity is rising, and then comes the twist of the story: Emperor Constantine. Constantine, the great military genius, political tactician, and perhaps the most important man of Christian history, who never picked up a Bible. In 313 AD, Constantine issues the Edict of Milan, legalizing Christianity across the Roman Empire. It's no longer a crime to worship Jesus. That changes everything. Constantine wasn't baptized until his deathbed, but his mother Helena, hardcore believer. She goes relic hunting across the Holy Land and builds churches everywhere. Constantine, wanting to legalize the new faith and unify his crumbling empire, chooses Vatican Hill as the site for his monument. Around 324 AD, Constantine orders the construction of Old St. Peter's Basilica, directly over the supposed tomb of St. Peter. It's a massive statement. This man you killed? He's the rock. And now the church is rising. The original basilica stood for over 1,000 years. The modern St. Peter's we see today, it didn't break ground until the 1500s, but that's a story for another chapter. In 756 AD, a Frankish king named Pepin the Short, yes, actually Pepin the Short, gifted the Pope a chunk of land, birthing a papal site, a weird fusion of religion and governments. For over a millennium, the Pope wasn't just a spiritual leader, he was the head of state, with armies, allies, and enemies. By the Middle Ages, the papacy had morphed into a political titan. Think Game of Thrones, but everyone's in a robe. In Vatican Hill, it went from being a graveyard to the seat of the new spiritual empire. But empires don't last forever. In the 1800s, Italy unified and the papal states were dismantled. The Pope lost all of his land, except for one tiny enclave. And that's when a fascist enters the chat. In 1929, Benito Mussolini needed to secure Catholic support, signed the Lateran Treaty with Pope Pius XI. In exchange for recognition and peace, the Pope gets the Vatican City, a sovereign state of just 0.2 square miles large. It has its own passport, flag, currency, and army. Yes, the Swiss Guard counts. So what started as a burial mound for a crucified fisherman became the smallest country in the world, and arguably the most powerful per square foot. The Vatican isn't a spiritual center for Catholicism. It's a relic of Roman ambition, Constantine's propaganda, and centuries of power plays, all wrapped in incense and gold. And we're just getting started. The Vatican didn't just survive history, it shaped it. For nearly 2,000 years, popes have pulled levers behind the scenes. And in the fall of the empires to the rise of an entire civilizations, if chapter 1 was the birth of the Vatican, chapter 2 is the part where it sharpens its teeth. In 1054, Christianity had full-blown family feuds. On one side, the Roman Catholic Church, based in Rome, and on the other, the Eastern Orthodox Church, based in Constantinople. The reason? Power, pride, politics, and a little argument about whether the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father alone or the Father and the Son. It sounds petty, but it split the Christian world into two. The Pope excommunicated the Patriarch excommunicated the Pope. It was like a spiritual Cold War that still echoes today. Less than 50 years later, Pope Urban II launches the First Crusade. The message? God wills it. The goal? Retake the Holy Land from the Muslim rule. But it wasn't just about religion. It was also about land, glory, and controlling trade routes. For nearly 200 years, the Vatican would send wave after wave of crusaders to the Middle East. These weren't peaceful pilgrims, these were religious war machines. And when they weren't killing Muslims, they were sometimes killing other Christians. Like the Fourth Crusade, when crusaders sacked Constantinople. That's right, the Vatican's holy warriors looted fellow believers in a blood-soaked quest for power. Now let's talk about the Inquisition. Officially launched in the 12th century to combat heresy,
Burn the heretic! Purge the unclean!
The Inquisition became a tool of control and terror. The church hunted down anyone who dared question doctrine, tortured, forced confessions, public executions. It was all a part of the package. Spain took it to the extreme. Under Torquemada, the Spanish Inquisition burned thousands of people at the stake. Jews, Muslims, alleged witches, it didn't matter. If you didn't follow the church's version of truth, they tried to beat it into you or burn you out of it. In 1517, the Vatican faced its greatest internal rebellion, the Protestant Reformation. A German monk named Martin Luther had enough. He saw the church selling indulgence, basically get out of hell cards for the rich. Luther nailed his 95 Theses to a church door and lit a match that split Europe into two. Catholic versus Protestant, Pope versus princes. The Vatican lost entire nations, England, much of Germany, and Scandinavia. And what did the church do in response? Counter-Reformation. They cleaned up their act a little, but also doubled down on suppression and propaganda. Jesuits were sent around the world, converted by the sword of the word. Skip ahead to the 20th century, World War II. The Vatican declared neutrality. On paper, they weren't siding with the Nazis or the Allies, but critics argue that Pope Pius XII remained silent during the Holocaust, even as Jews were rounded up right outside the Vatican walls. Some say he worked behind the scenes to save lives, others say he feared Hitler too much to act. I agree with the latter. What's certain is that after the war, Vatican connections helped some Nazi officers escape Europe through secret routes called the Rat Lines, leading to South America. This would cover other conspiracies, specifically in Argentina. Then came Vatican II, a council of global bishops that flipped tradition on its head. The Mass was no longer in Latin. The laity got more involved. Other religions weren't automatically condemned. It was modernization, a new face for a very old empire. But not everyone was happy. Some traditional Catholics believed the Vatican had gone soft, abandoning its sacred identity to keep up with the times. Others welcomed the changes, calling it a long overdue reformation from within. These weren't just blips in the church's history, they were defining battles for its very soul. Crusades, inquisitions, reforms, the world wars, the Vatican weathered them all, evolving and surviving through fire and scandal. But while its enemies came and went, the Vatican remained, watching, adjusting, surviving. It wasn't just a church anymore, it was an empire, with robes instead of armor and doctrine instead of swords. But in the shadows of that empire, secrets began to pile up. We've walked through the blood-soaked hallways of history, wars, crusades, reforms, scandals, and yet the Vatican remains standing, untouchable. But now, we get to the good stuff. The sacred vaults of the secret archives, the relics the world never sees, except maybe in whispers. This isn't about gold chalices or fancy robes. This is about power, the kind of power that lives forever, when it's buried in marble and guarded in silence. It sounds like a Dan Brown fever dream, but yes, the Vatican does have a secret archive, officially called the Archivum Secretum Vaticanum, a lot of nums. It holds over 53 miles of shelving and more than 35,000 volumes and counting. But secret, in this case, doesn't mean top secret like Area 51. It means private. These are the Pope's personal records, not for public use. Still, access is extremely restricted. You can't just waltz in with a camera and a flashlight. Only credentialed scholars with the Vatican-approved research topics can apply for access. Even then, you're limited to a few documents a day, and anything after the 20th century, completely off limits. What's inside? Letters from Michelangelo begging for the Pope to pay him. The trial transcripts from Galileo, forced to recant his claim that the Earth orbits the Sun. The excommunication of Martin Luther. Official documents from the Knights Templar trials. And, this is real, a letter from Mary Queen of Scots, written right before her execution. What's not listed? We don't know. And that's the point. Scholars believe there are documents tied to everything from Vatican financial cover-ups to Pope Pius XII's actions during World War II that the Church is still suppressing. Others suggest that archives may contain lost early Gospels, ancient pre-Christian texts, or even first-hand reports of heretical miracles. Theories swirl, the truth stays locked away. We probably will never find out the truth. Let's go back to the body that started it all, St. Peter. According to church tradition, Peter was crucified upside down in 64 AD and buried on Vatican Hill, but for centuries no one could prove it. That changed in the 1940s when Pope Pius XII quietly authorized a secret excavation under St. Peter's Basilica. For over a decade, archaeologists dug beneath the marble, beneath the altars, down into the dirt. And they found it, a Roman necropolis. And inside, a box of bones marked in red, graffitied, Petros Ini. Peter is here. In 1968, Pope Paul announced they had likely found the remains of St. Peter. DNA testing wasn't possible back then, but the bones matched a 60 to 70-year-old man, Mediterranean, buried in the right time period. Are they really Peter's bones? The church says yes. Critics say it's inconclusive. Either way, they're now kept in a container under the high altar of St. Peter's, never shown to the public. The literal foundations of the church, built atop a grave. Then there's the Spear of Destiny, also known as the Holy Lance. This is a weapon that supposedly pierced Christ's side during the crucifixion. According to legend, whoever wields it will be unstoppable in battle. That's why Hitler was so obsessed with it. He allegedly had it taken from the museum in Austria during the Nazis' takeover in 1938. After the war, the US took possession of the spear and returned it to Vienna, where it remains today, supposedly. But here's the twist. There are multiple spears claiming to be the real one. Some scholars and Vatican watchers believe the true Spear of Destiny, the one recovered by Constantine and revered by medieval kings, was hidden in the Vatican centuries ago and never left. Is it locked away in a vault? Or just a legend wrapped in myth? The Vatican isn't saying. Now let's talk about one of my favorite subjects, the Gnostic Gospels. In 1945, a farmer in Nag Hammadi, Egypt, discovered something that shook biblical scholarship to its core, a library of early Christian texts, many of which were rejected by the early church. These include the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, and even one attributed to Mary Magdalene. These texts paint a radically different picture of Jesus, more human, more mystical, and more egalitarian. These Gospels aren't technically in the Vatican, they're held in various museums and collections, but the Vatican has long opposed their canonization, and some researchers believe that other unreleased texts may still be buried in the archives, possibly original teachings of Christ that never made it into the Bible. Why suppress them? Because they threaten the entire structure of the church doctrine. Whether they are canon is very much still up for debate, and I'll leave that to the listener to decide what they believe. One of the lesser-known conspiracy claims is that the Vatican holds ancient maps, drawings of the world made before certain continents were officially discovered. Some suggest that the copies of pre-Columbian maps of the Americas or even submerged cities are locked away in these archives. These theories usually reference the Piri Reis map, a real 16th century Turkish map showing parts of Antarctica ice-free. Did early church explorers chart the world long before modern history credits them? Did ancient civilizations leave records the Vatican found? We don't know. But if the maps do exist, they're not in any public catalogs that I can find. The things I have listed aren't just relics. They're keys to faith, to control, to knowledge kept out of reach. And whether you're a believer, a skeptic, or just someone who likes digging up uncomfortable truths, one thing is for sure. The Vatican holds more than we'll ever know. When people think spy agency, they picture CIA, MI6, or the KGB. But those organizations are amateurs compared to the original, the Vatican. You see, long before Langley and Moscow started wiretapping phones and flipping agents, the Catholic Church had already built a global network of informants, diplomats, secret orders, and code makers. The Vatican wasn't just a religious institution, it was an intelligence machine, and it operated in the shadows. Think about this. The Catholic Church installed confessionals in nearly every country on earth. For centuries, these weren't just tools for spiritual guidance, they were also a perfect intelligence-gathering system. Parishioners confessed their sins, affairs, crimes, political unrest, fears, and priests, trained listeners, and often locals, relayed troubling patterns up the chain of command. This was social surveillance before the internet. The Vatican knew what its people were thinking, sometimes before their own governments did. It was like embedding a wiretap inside the soul. The Vatican has over 180 diplomatic missions worldwide, called nunciators. These are embassies of the Holy See, not the Vatican City State. Vatican diplomats, called nuncios, often have full diplomatic immunity. They operate independently of local bishops, and they report directly to the Pope. This means that every continent, every government, every revolution, there's probably a Vatican representative with direct intelligence access that bypasses the host country completely. And here's the wild part. Their mail, their data, their movements are legally protected under international law. Modern spy agencies had to fight for decades to build these pipelines. The Vatican had them by default for centuries. If the Vatican had a Black Ops branch, it was the Society of Jesus, better known as the Jesuits. Founded in 1540 by Ignatius of Loyola, the Jesuits were part monk, part scholar, part spy. Their mission? Combat the Protestant Reformation and expand the church's influence by any means necessary. These guys went everywhere. China, India, Japan, South America, and simply blended in. They mastered languages, mapped territory, converted kings, and collected strategic data along the way. They were cultural infiltrators centuries ahead of the intelligence game. Even today, the Jesuits remain one of the most powerful secretive arms of the church. And Pope Francis was the first Jesuit pope in history. Let that sink in. And spies need cash. The Vatican has a bank so secretive, it makes Swiss accounts look like piggy banks. Officially called the Institute of the Works of Religion, the Vatican Bank has long been accused of laundering money for mafias, corrupt politicians, and even dictators. But the most famous scandal? The death of Roberto Calvi in 1982. Calvi was nicknamed God's banker. He had deep ties to the Vatican Bank, the Italian Mafia, and the Masonic lodge called Propaganda Due. When investigators closed in, Calvi's body was found hanging from Blackfriars Bridge in London, his pockets stuffed with bricks and cash. The Vatican denied involvement, but internal memos showed they were deeply entangled into the scandal. Some believe Calvi was silenced to protect secrets so damaging they could have shattered the church's global credibility. Food for thought. In 1978, Pope John Paul I was elected. He promised reform, cleaning up Vatican finances and removing corrupt officials. 33 days later, he was dead. Official cause? Heart attack, but no autopsy was performed. His body was embalmed within hours, and the Vatican changed the story multiple times about who found him, what condition he was in, and what he was working on. Conspiracy theorists like myself, even some Vatican insiders, have long believed he was assassinated. Why? Because he allegedly planned to expose mafia ties, purge the Vatican Bank, and reorganize power within the Curia. His successor, Pope John Paul II, took a different approach. He survived an assassination attempt in 1981. He was shot 4 times in a Vatican-backed conspiracy that may have included Bulgarian secret agents and Soviet KGB. If the church wasn't running covert ops, it definitely attracted the attention of people who were. During the Cold War, the CIA and the Vatican worked hand in hand to fight communism. American bishops, especially cardinals found in New York, acted as intermediaries, delivering info from the church to U.S. intelligence. Some historians believe Pope John Paul II's deep knowledge of communist Poland aided the West in destabilizing the Eastern Bloc. So the Vatican didn't just observe global events, it influenced them through back channels, briefings, and deals made far from the eyes of the faithful. Behind the walls of the world's smallest country is the oldest intelligence operation in history. No digital surveillance, no drones, just centuries of global presence cloaked in faith, protected by law, and fed by confession, diplomacy, and power. The Vatican isn't just a church, it's a state with secrets. And some believe those secrets go far beyond anything earthly. Now, in this chapter, we're going to go over some pretty crazy stuff and pretty far out there ideas, but I want you to keep an open mind. Now, if you know me, I'm a big fan of the alien conspiracy theory. And even if aliens haven't come to our planet yet, there are still some things in the sky that are unexplained. The government is now calling them UAPs, but for a good period of history, we called them UFOs. And I think there is a lot of evidence to say that there are things out there in our skies that simply cannot be explained by modern physics. This is a very interesting subject. But what if I told you that the Vatican has been telling stories like this for a long time? The Catholic Church has always spoken in mysteries, but in recent years its mystery has expanded far beyond Earth. The Vatican isn't just guarding relics and scriptures anymore, it's watching the skies. Because quietly, carefully, the Church is preparing for something. And it may be bigger than any of us ever imagined. On top of Mount Graham in Arizona, once sacred Apache land, sits the Vatican's Advanced Technology Telescope. Why? Not for astrology, for astronomy. Deep space, exoplanets, high-resolution scans of distant stars. The Vatican Observatory is one of the oldest in the world, but now it's looking further than ever before, and they've made their position clear. In 2008, Vatican astronomer Father Jose Funes said, "The possibility of extraterrestrial life does not contradict our faith." He called them our brothers in creation. Pope Francis? He once joked that he would baptize a Martian if one asked. And Jesuit astronomer Guy Consolmagno, the Vatican's lead stargazer, has openly stated he would welcome contact with alien life. These aren't wild theories, these are official church voices. And to further my point, the Bible doesn't limit God's creation to earth. You can find in Psalms 148. It tells the stars and heavenly hosts to praise him. In John 10:16, it states, "I have other sheep not of this fold, I must bring them also." Was he talking about Gentiles or something further? And the book of Enoch, which is my personal favorite non-canonical scripture, it was kept out of the Bible but preserved in early churches. We hear of the Watchers, angels who descended from the heavens and interact with mankind. Not myths, not fantasies, but descriptions of non-human intelligence recorded by ancient theologians and prophets. And you can find this in the book of Genesis today. The church has quietly built a theology big enough for aliens. They call it cosmic Christology, the idea that Jesus' sacrifice wasn't just for Earth, but for the entire universe. In this view, aliens don't threaten Christianity, they complete it. Different forms, different worlds, but all part of the same divine story. Because the church isn't just preparing us, it's managing what happens next. When the world learns we are not alone, when governments stammer, science scrambles, and people panic, the Vatican wants to be the one that says, "Don't worry, we've always known." But ask yourself this, if they're saying this much publicly, what are they not telling us? What's buried in the Vatican archives? What sightings, ancient texts, or unexplained events have already been recorded and sealed away? Is this really about faith? Or is this about control? These are questions worth speculating about. The church wants us to believe it's ready, that aliens or angels are not a surprise, that it can explain the unexplainable. But the truth is, whether it's beings from beyond, hidden truths of the past, or revelations still to come, the Vatican knows more than it says. And when the moment comes, they'll be the ones holding the candle. Are we going to stumble in the dark, or will we listen? Over the course of this video, we've followed a thread that stretches across 2,000 years. From the bloody birth of the church to papal power plays, holy wars, secret archives, lost artifacts, and whispers of things not of this world, we've looked at real history, dark, complicated, and sometimes awe-inspiring. And we've looked at what might lie just beyond the veil. Not to mock it, not to disprove it, but to understand it. Because this isn't about tearing down anyone's faith. It's about searching for the truth, wherever it leads. Whether you're devout, doubtful, or somewhere in between, my goal isn't to preach or to convert. My goal is to pull back the curtain, to follow the trail of evidence even when it's buried in gold, or locked behind centuries of silence. I'm not a priest. I'm not a prophet. I'm just a guy that asks too many questions. That's why I go by the Rogue Historian. If this video made you think, made you question, or gave you a different way to look at the world, like, comment, and share it. Subscribe to the channel if you want more deep dives into the parts of history they don't want you to look closely at. And if you want to support this work directly, help me keep the channel independent, honest, and wild, join me on Patreon. The link's down below. And let me know in the comments, what should we uncover next? Because history isn't just something that's happened. It's something they've carefully hidden. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.
Step right up, take a seat, my friend. Truths got twisted, never end. From empires falling to angels that cry, the rogue historians, your fearless guide. We'll dig through scrolls, unseal the past. Ask the questions they never asked. From Rome's slow fade to the CIA's games, we're pulling the threads and naming names. So follow me down the corridors of time, through secret symbols, reason, and rhyme, where fact meets myth and saints wear crowns. We'll laugh at the madness while truth comes round. You come along with the rogue historian. We're uncovering the world they've been storing in. The watchers watch, but who watch them? The Vatican's got its hidden gem. History whispers through the smoke and the wine, and I'll show you what they left behind. So pour a drink, kick back and stay. We're breaking down the walls of yesterday. Every tale's got a spark.